Hello and welcome to the Very Wool Podcast. My name's Diana Hawthorne and you can find me online as Delaware Spinster. It's been a couple weeks since I've podcasted, so I'm going to update you about some finished objects, sock week, and what I've been up to. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about mending as well as advents and dyeing. So I've got a lot to cover today and hopefully my voice will hold up. I've been busy, so I'll update you a little bit about what's been going on in the last 2 weeks. But let's start with a finished object because I am not wearing anything handmade or special today. I'm sorry, it's very hot here. I don't want to sweat into my hand knits as it happens today. So my first and biggest finished object that I'm so excited about is my crochet baby blanket that is all washed and blocked and ready to be gifted. I will show you first, as well as I can here, the full size of it. It's a pretty standard baby blanket size. It's about 30 inches square. And now I'm just going to kind of fold it into quarters because you know it looks the same on all quarters, but this way we can talk about it a little bit more easily. So this is the sort of improvised granny square. It's a classic granny square, so it's not like the pattern is anything earth-shattering, but I alternated 2 yarns. One of them, both of these were in my collection for many years. So one of them, this sort of every other row kind of consistent color that you see, it's a little bit marled if you can see it up close. And this is sadly discontinued. Lion brand Comfy Cotton Blend yarn in Chai Latte. And I had a whole sweaters quantity of this. I think I could still make myself a shirt. I only used 1.5 skeins, maybe not even, because it's like 500 yards a skein of a DK or worsted weight. So it was a pretty generous put up. It was like a big cake. So I used a remnant of a skein from something else and then most of the next skein, but that's it. So I still have plenty of that I can use to make myself a sweater down the road if I want to, or maybe at this point it would just be a top. But anyway, I love that yarn. I still love working with it. It's one of the last kind of holdouts I have in my collection. And then the other one is another cotton acrylic blend. It's Hobbii Twister. And it's one cake of their twister. I'll put the name in the description, something about morning sunrise or something. But I was really happy with, I thought the colors in Chai Latte, since it has little pinks, little blues, and then a little bit of a darker blue, would go really well with this cake, which you're seeing the full cake here. I was seriously playing yarn chicken. So yeah, this is the full length of the color changes. I like how it came out. For the first time ever, I did a crab stitch border. I've never done this. This is basically, if you don't know the crab stitch, you're doing like a single crochet border in reverse. You're like working backwards, so it kind of gets twisted over. I feel like it's gonna hold up well, and I thought it looked nice, and it allowed me to frame it with this last, the end of this skein, which had this darker blue, because I felt like otherwise it didn't look finished otherwise. And also I was thinking, you know, baby blankets, if it has almost a white edge, it kind of gets dirtier. I feel like, I don't know, babies do weird, they like drag their blankets or put them in their mouths or something. I don't get babies. Anyway, so I made this baby blanket. I'm very happy with it. Soft, squishy, easy to wash because it's cotton and acrylic. And I really hope that my friend is going to like it. And if not, I hope she just doesn't tell me. I hope they give it to their dog or something if they don't like it. That's fine. I'm not offended by that, but I just hope she can pretend to like it if when she sees it, because it was a lot of work. I'm really happy with it. I'm happy I did it because I felt like I felt like it was the right thing to do. I pretty much make a baby blanket for everybody, so I never want somebody to feel left out. And really, I mean, I end up making a baby blanket once a year in this time period in my life. So it's really not that big of a deal for me, but I like the way it came out, and I'm really proud that I used things that I had, because often I'm tempted to, you know, go out, oh, this is an excuse to buy a new yarn. And because most people don't want wool yarn for their babies, it would either force me to buy a new acrylic cotton kind of a yarn, like baby yarn, or use something in my collection, my stash. I have a fair number of cotton yarns, but I don't have a lot of acrylic anymore. A lot of the stuff that I used at the very beginning of my knitting and crocheting career, which really, wasn't, I learned as an adult. So, like 2018, 2019, I was mostly buying from big box stores, which it worked out really well for me at the time when I was learning. I wasn't sure how committed I would be to it. And that works for a lot of people. So, so I'm so glad that option exists. But over time, my taste changed. I got a lot more into wool, like really rapidly. And then got into, if I'm going to use a plant based fiber, I want it to be organic cotton or Pima cotton, or I want it to be linen or hemp, something that I can feel really great about using, and know a little bit more about the origins of the fiber. So my collection over time has really shifted. But I still had a little bit of this kind of yarn, and it's perfect for something like this, for making a blanket, for doing a project that that is going to be gifted, that it makes more sense to give something that can be thrown into the washing machine and you don't have to worry about as much. So that's why I don't know a lot of people who are having a baby and then also want to be hand washing wool, which they're maybe not familiar with, and laying something flat to dry. That's not everybody's speed. So, so I try and respect that when I'm giving a gift like this. So for that reason, I still feel like I have to have some yarns in my collection that maybe I wouldn't use for a sweater for me, but, maybe they're good for other people, and for gifts, because gifts, sometimes it's better if it's low maintenance. But anyway, I've given away a lot of those yarns. There's a place near me that recycles and reuses all craft supplies. They take donations and then they host events there, but they also allow teachers to shop for free, and everybody else to shop for really discounted craft supplies. So I feel good about taking yarn that no longer really fits my collection there, and feel like somebody else is going to use it. But I'm glad as it is that I kept some of these yarns that I was sort of on the fence about whether I'm going to use them or not. When I realized I wanted to make a baby blanket, it was so perfect that I had these two types of yarn in my stash that then I felt would be really good for the blanket. And I'm happy how it came out. And again, I hope she likes it, but I like it. So, so I made it. It is what it is. But anyway, I'm happy about that. And that sort of brings me to another topic about the changing yarn in my collection, which is sort of a whole thing, but I'll talk a little bit more about it as we go along today. You may have noticed my voice is not as clear as it always is, or maybe it sounds the same to you. I'm not sure. It feels different to me. I was actually out past midnight last night for the first time in years, because I went to a musical. We went, my sister and mom and I went to see Funny Girl in Philly. So, so it was not like my average Saturday night. And I feel very tired, but I wanted to talk to you and update you today anyway. So I'm going to try and prioritize the most important stuff. And then if I'm running out of voice, we'll just talk about other stuff later. Okay, so that was my first and my only true majorly finished object. But I also, since I last saw you, we were in the middle of Tour de Fleece, and wrapping up Tour de Fleece. I spun a lot in that 3 weeks or so, but I just towards the end was really losing steam on posting about spinning and talking about spinning. I was still doing it, but just kind of losing a little bit of my mojo for that. It's a lot to be spinning every day and then only talking about spinning. So it was a nice change of pace to start Sock Week. So Sock Week, if you don't know, is hosted by Nitty Natty, or Love in Stitches is her other name online, but she started Sock Week as a riff on Shark Week. It used to be during Shark Week, and this year it was kind of like the week after. But the goal is to hand knit socks, and I specify hand knit because you know I have a circular sock machine and I love to crank socks. But this was not cranking and hand finishing. This was like purely hand knitting with, you know, traditional hand knit socks. And you're supposed to hand knit fingering weight adult size sock, which can be a shortie, so it is. And you had 8 days. Today's like the 8th day. So I actually finished on day 6, and I probably could have finished sooner if I wasn't also working on a second sock and, you know, 30 other things. But I'm very happy with how it came out. It fits me very well. And I really enjoyed this process. And I have tried, I'm just gonna show you how cute this is. I have tried to hand knit socks so many times in my knitting life. I've used the wrong needles that were too sharp or not sharp enough or too big, so the gauge was too loose. I've tried to do a DK weight sock, which I'm still sort of working on, but I just have not had the dedication to do it. And I thought, you know what? I'm signing up for Sock Week. I'm gonna do some of these events that Knitty Natty put on, which was tremendous fun. And I'm gonna try and do it and just like put other stuff aside a little bit and focus on one thing, which, you know, I'm sort of on and off with that. And I'm so happy with how this sock came out. The sad thing is I still have to make a second sock. It's not, you know, it's like a finished object, but it's not. So it's a finished object that counted for the purpose of Sock Week. You get to count each sock separately. So the fact that I finished one and I'm miles from finishing another, it doesn't matter, I finished one. So this is a self-striping sock in, I will show you the ball if I have it here, maybe. It's Tia's Terrific Threads. It's a self-striping sock yarn, and the name was Beach Please, which you could take sort of 2 different ways, but anyway, beach. And it does look beachy. It came already as a ball, which I loved because then it looked really fun. And pardon me while I'm like reaching for this ball. Okay, here you go. So, by the way, I finished exactly, it's 8 stripes of color. And it's 8 3 times. I finished on the color before this. So that means my second sock is perfectly going to match because it's starting with the brown. How cool is that? But when I looked at this ball, when I was gonna buy it online, and I didn't know she'd actually send it as a gobstopper, that's fantastic, so much fun, although it does roll away while you're trying to knit with it. Can't say it's the most convenient, but it is super adorable. When I looked at this gobstopper, in my head, if I was arranging these colors, I probably would have alternated like light and dark next to each other and like warm and cool, and she did not, and I love the way she did it. It was not what I expected, which was cool because I didn't see what it would look like before. I just saw the colors, and I didn't pay enough attention to think about, okay, well, this overlaps there that way, and then I was just, you know, I saw this and I thought, those are colors I like. And so it's really a different way than I would have done it. And I love that. I think it's beautiful and it fits me so well. This is sort of a classic toe. This is an Afterthought heel. So I knitted the tube and then the toe, and then I picked up and cut the yarn, or, you know, it's barely steeking, but you're cutting in one spot and ripping back and then doing the Afterthought heel. This is the second sock pattern in Summer Lee's book about sock knitting that I got for Sock Week, because I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it this time. I'm actually doing it. And I love this. This was really fun. It fits me really well. I took a bunch of notes for myself. I did do a pretty thorough swatch beforehand because I was definitely going way too tight with the cast on. And I also did too few stitches, and then I measured my foot. I did a swatch. I realized I needed it to be bigger, and then I cast on and did this. I've just cast on for the second one for its mate, but I'm also working on, in Summer Lee's book, the first sock is a traditional heel flap and gusset, if that means anything to you as a sock knitter. I'm sure it would, but anyway, so I'm now doing her first basic sock in the book with a different yarn. And I'm enjoying my heel flap so tiny. I'm not even going to show you, but I'm enjoying how that's coming along too. So yeah, so I'm having fun. If you saw my post on Instagram, I did say, like, I feel like this is a little bit controversial to say this, but honestly, this sock, it's adorable. It doesn't fit me all that differently or all that much better than my cranked socks. I really like using my knitting machine and cranking, and I'm happy with those socks. So I still think I'm gonna knit a couple pairs of socks a year because I like the portability of it. I enjoyed the process, I really did. I'm more of a sweater knitter or garment knitter, but I liked the process and I like some of the things about it, and it feels, I don't know, it feels different to hand knit a sock, and it feels like, I feel like proud that I made this sock, like irrationally proud for a small object that took me like 5 days, but I liked making it, and it made me feel, when I was this excited about this yarn, so like a self-striping yarn especially, I loved these colors, I had so much fun, and it really was potato chippy. Like it was like one more color tonight. And I got through it faster for that reason. I think there are some really cute sock patterns, like lace patterns and slip stitch patterns that I could see doing, maybe even color work patterns. So I do think having the ability to hand knit socks is an asset, but I still think for the most part, not just for gifts, but also for me, I like how my cranked socks feel. So anyway, you can see I did put one of my more recent socks onto one of these as well. You can tell the difference. If you're looking at the heels, like, yeah, this heel looks cooler. Okay. I think it looks cooler. I get it. You know, the increases look a little different, although you can do this kind of a heel, a short row heel with knitting too. I think it would be a short row heel. I don't know what kind of a heel it would be if you're hand knitting it. But, and yeah, this is not a ribbed cuff. This is a fold over cuff. Fits me perfectly well. Little bit looser, little bit tighter. The toes look very similar. It's really not all that different when you're doing the one versus the other. The one takes a lot longer. So, and I get, you know, again, I think it's a little bit controversial. I think people talk about machine knitting like it's not hand knitting, and it's not, but I'm still using my hands. I still couldn't do it without using my hands. I still had to learn skills to do it. It's a separate but related thing, and it's something that I enjoy doing. So anyway, so that is my other sort of finished object, and I'm going to go ahead and count one sock as a finished object, even though I can't wear it until I do the second one. But the third thing is also sort of a semi-finished object, which is the yarn that's right here and these two skeins here. I was just having fun this week. For a change of pace, I wanted to do some dyeing. I've actually been a little bit of a dyeing kick again. I have sort of waves in my crafting. I don't know if that's a thing for you as well. Sometimes I feel like dyeing. And I had a sweater quantity of this ivory yarn. Ivory is the base from Knomad. So Knomad is where I get pretty much all of my undyed yarn. I've occasionally used other bases, but I really like Knomad as a supplier. So anyway, so this is Ivory. Ivory is non-superwash, extra fine merino, like 80%, I think. And then maybe it's 70%. I don't know, 70 to 80. And then there's royal alpaca. I kind of think it's only 10% royal alpaca, but there's a chance there's more. And it's definitely 10% silk. I don't know what a royal alpaca is. I know what Horkaya and Surrey alpacas are, and I think those are the only breeds. And what a royal alpaca is, I don't know. They probably have a finer fiber. I don't know if it's an official designation, but that's what they say it is. So that's what it is. It's definitely merino, It's definitely not superwash, and there's definitely alpaca and silk in it. So it's got a nice sheen with that silk. I don't know how well you can kind of see that. And it doesn't, because it's not superwash, it doesn't speckle as well. It gets kind of more blotchy, which is fine by me. But so then I kind of did like a painterly approach, and I was just having fun. I wanted purple, and I added some sort of highlights, lowlights. I did some blues and teals and some browns, and I kind of think it adds to the vibe here, especially when I'm not wearing something fancy. So I'm sort of doing a yarn of the day situation over here. But I have 5 skeins of this, which for me is a generous sweater quantity. It's fingering weight, by the way. I did not say that. I think it's 437 yards per 100 grams. So a good amount. So 5 skeins is like 2,200 yards, basically. So for me, that works really well for a lot of different, more intricate sweaters or long sleeved cardigans, things like that. I think I am shifting my plan for the stone crop from Andrea Mowry. I thought about making a few other sweaters with this, but I'm thinking that I'm going to do a stone crop. And the reason for that is that is a sweater, the stone crop cardigan, I should say, because there's also the pullover. That's a sweater that's steeked. So I was planning on hand spinning for it. There's no rules against making 2 of them eventually, so I could always do that later. But I definitely want to hand spin for Shifty and Shiftigan and Trinigan and a lot of other sweaters that she has. So I kind of thought using hand dyed might be a good alternative for stone crop, where I won't feel as nervous when I'm cutting through, steeking the front of the cardigan. Stone crop cardigan is knit in the round, which is nice and convenient. It has some color work in it, so I would have to have just a little bit, like 1 skein, less than a skein of another color, which I'd probably use a hand spun, but I'm not sure. I might find something else in my stash. But I specifically did not want to use a superwash yarn for that. You can use superwash yarn and steek. I know you can, okay? You're going to reinforce it anyway, but it's always better if it's not. Like, it's just going to be a weight off of me if it's not superwash. If I've got that grippiness of the non-superwash merino and the alpaca, then I'll feel better about steeking this cardigan, cutting open my knitting at the end. So anyway, so I'm kind of thinking about that. What do you think about this for a stone crop? I think it'd be cute. I don't know what my contrast color would be. The spin that I'm doing for the Trinigan, which is another cardigan by Andrea Mowry, is also purple, but it's not quite this shade of purple. It's not as variegated because I'm spinning it in I blended it a lot, and so it's going to be marled but not variegated. Overall, on average, it's less bright and sort of jammy than this is. I think it's also more of a blue purple and less of a magenta, where this has a fair amount of a warmer purple or magenta in it. So, and they're completely different silhouettes. But with that one, the contrast that I'm spinning for it is in the green and yellow side. So with the stone crop, although I do want a lot of contrast, I would not want to go green, just so that there's not that comparison there. I don't know. So I'm thinking about, and even yellow, I think would be too close to that. Don't know. I mean, I could always just do white, or I could do like a low contrast and do a shade of blue, and that could work really well. That could be really pretty. So anyway, so I'm kind of thinking about that. I'm not going to cast it on right now. So this is currently a finished object. Made the yarn, dyed it, happy with it, love that yarn. And for now, it's just going to be hanging out. It's going to be in my collection. I don't use yarn as fast as I sort of use yarn in my head. So I know I've got a lot of things that I'm working on. So I'm not really going to cast that on right away, but I do like how I dyed the yarn, and I will swatch it at some point. When I start to get into that, like, oh, I really want to cast this on, I'm going to swatch it first, because half of the time when I swatch a yarn for a project, I realize that it's not exactly going to work for that project. And then I start to think about what other yarn might work for that project, or what other project might work for this yarn, depending on sort of what's motivating me. But swatching is not like a once and done thing for me. It ends up sort of turning into its own tangent and project. So yeah, so I haven't even swatched this. So who knows if it's going to be a stone crop, but it's something I'm thinking about. And it was one of the things that I worked on this week. So while we're talking about dyeing, one of my whips right now, one of my works in progress, is a dyeing based work in progress. So as far as active whips, I'm still working on that dress, the Handspun Fenton dress by Pamela Wynn. I'm still working on the woolen pine Scotch Broom top. I've made some progress this week, but I was mostly knitting the socks. So anyway, so I'm not much further than I was when I last talked about it. Somehow it takes me a really long time to do everything, guys, but I'm happy with how it's looking. So I'm still working on those two as far as knitting. Spinning, I'm still working on like everything I was working on during Tour de Fleece. I didn't truly finish anything. So I'm still working on a lot of different things downstairs in that way. But, and I'm still working on, of course, the mate to that sock and the other hand knit sock. Yeah, there's a lot going on. But I have been really excited about dyeing this week. I had this week off of work, which I had taken off just to kind of relax and get stuff done at home. But I started a new sort of project. And I told you earlier, like we were kind of talking about my yarn collection. I'm trying to get away from calling it a stash because I think that has the wrong connotation. I do think yarn collecting is sort of its own hobby. And I think there's nothing wrong with having collection. I really love my yarn collection. So I think it used to be a stash and now it's not. I think now it's more of a collection, but I have been intentional with what I have destashed, what I've given away. Like I talked about, the, donations that I've made. And I'm also really intentional about what I'm bringing in. So at this point, I've been buying a lot more like pre-order yarns from indie dyers that I like. If I'm really excited about a yarn or a collection, I've been pre-ordering advents for, or, all kinds of different celestial countdowns, winter solstice countdown, New Year's countdowns. There's a lot of different forms of, what that may take. A lot of the yarn dyers still use the word advent. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But anyway, so the yarn advents where it's often a bunch of mini skeins counting down to maybe one big skein on December 21st or maybe 25th or 31st in some cases. And I basically I have like no yarn minis, but I use them in a few different ways. And I like really scrappy projects. And I just decided, in addition to getting like sweater quantities, which is what I tend to get and what I tend to dye, I tend to think in terms of sweater quantities. That doesn't really help me when I need contrasting yarn for this. And it doesn't necessarily motivate me as much as a project where I'm doing a bunch of different colors. I like really marled projects and faded projects, and it's definitely not everybody's thing, but it's definitely my thing. So I've just decided, as part of my building my collection this year, which like this year I decided was sort of a building year since I had donated so much yarn that was no longer serving me. So I was starting not fresh this year, but starting with less yarn and a lot of sort of one-off skeins that I wasn't really excited about, or like mohair that I need to hold with something, or, so I decided to just embrace building my collection this year. and I definitely have some advents that are coming. But I also had this sort of wacky idea to dye my own advent. And I thought about it last year, and it just didn't work out, and I sort of lost the motivation for it, and I couldn't get anybody else excited about it. And then this week I just decided that I'm not going to sell a yarn advent or anything. I'm not really trying to sell things right now. It's like it was not something that was successful for me, or the right usage of my time and energy. But I am gonna dye my own advent just for me. I always build an advent for my husband. I think it's really fun as part of when we moved in together. It was one of the sort of traditions that that I did to some degree growing up. We had just like one of the boxes where you've got the chocolates every day or something like that. It was never a big thing, but we definitely did a countdown to Christmas, which we celebrated, and it, like, I enjoyed the process. And it was something my husband had not ever done. So it's one of the traditions that we have sort of started in our house. And I make him an advent where I put things in for myself too. Like, I give myself, whether it's yarn or, things that I stitch markers, things that I've wanted. And then for my husband, I do mostly candy and snacks. He's big on that kind of stuff. And sometimes things like video games or like bigger gifts. But I decided that I wanted to dye yarn to match the snacks that I'm gifting my husband. So I have this whole idea for this snack vent or snack venture. I don't know what I'm calling it yet. It's really just for me. But I'm going to post all about it. So you'll get to see every yarn that I make in December. But I've been like going nuts dyeing yarns. I've dyed 3 more today. I'm just really sort of on a roll, and I've got my dyes, everything kind of set up, which it's a lot of setup and takedown and clean up with my sort of situation that I have. I don't always have a dye studio available to me. I'm not that kind of I dye for fun. So it's not something that's like permanently set up. So I've been having fun, and I just wanted to share with you just a sneak peek of a couple of different things. So one of them is just a pretty straightforward, like, for the most part, I've made my own mini skeins from Knomad Snowdrift. So I kind of just wound off mini skeins because it costs more to buy them. And it doesn't matter if they're 10 grams or 20 grams, or if one's 10 grams and another's 20 grams, because it's just for me. And it's just for me to sort of supplement my collection. Snowdrift is 75 merino, 25 nylon. So it is a good sock yarn. So I had a lack of yarn for heels and toes. And I realized that as I've been cranking socks and now with knitting a sock, that it was hard to find a contrasting mini skein. So I just kind of thought, why not just have some fun? So one example here, this is a snack that I love from Trader Joe's, and I'm sorry if this is backwards for you. I can't actually tell, but so it's called the mini almost everything bagel sandwich crackers. I'm not just trying to advertise. I'm not sponsored by Trader Joe's. I wish I was, but these are delicious. And if they're available near you and you like everything bagels, try them out. And then I just dyed this little mini skein, and I think that's so cute. I just had fun with it. It's kind of, it's speckled. It's a little bit, it's got a little bit of the vibe of it doesn't have to be perfect. But I was really happy with how this came out. I feel like it's got some of the fun speckled vibe of these crackers, and I feel like it's gonna go with some of the yarns that I have in my collection. This is not going to be an advent where it's a perfect gradient of a rainbow that, is in order, and that's not what it is. I'm creating mini skeins that I'm excited to dye, and then I'm gonna incorporate them with other Advent mini skeins maybe. I'm gonna use them as sock yarn. I'm gonna use them as scrappy yarn for other scrappy projects because I have so many scrappy like Advent projects on my list. I have so many different sweaters and things that are either fingering held double, so they're marled DK weight, or they're like the sea glass tee like we talked about, I know, like over a month ago from Wool and Pine is a 1x1 color work. So something like this could work in that. So anyway, I was excited about that. And then I started working on this is another snack that I like. The Ritter Sport. This is hard to find. This is the dark chocolate with marzipan filling. Marzipan is like an almond paste, but I like this, so I bought it. And then I was trying to conceptualize how red and white and brown kind of go together in a yarn, and what I was coming up with was not thrilling me. I also realized, by the way, I think because maybe like Valentine's Day, like red is associated with like passion and excitement and goes with chocolate in like a romantic way for Valentine's Day. So many chocolate bars are packaged with red. So I ended up with like 4 different chocolate bars that I bought. My husband loves chocolate, and they all had red packaging. And I was like, that's not, like it's gonna get redundant really quick. So for the day that I have this bar and any other sort of chocolate bars that I'm going to use, I decided to do minis that are tonal minis. I have a bunch more of these. I have some various sort of shades of chocolate. So these ones were definitely intended around this. So I tried to color match that red pretty well. And the marzipan, believe it or not, this is not just white. I dyed a color that's almost white, but anyway, it's sort of creamy like the marzipan. I really tried to get the dark chocolate, but I also had seen some pictures and had other chocolate bars in mind. So then I actually dyed like 10 little minis, tonal minis that are different shades of red and different shades of like the brown chocolatiness for the day that I have these. So this is not actually, it's like, it's going to be a special day that has like 10 mini skeins of tonals, because I figured I am a lot more likely to just use this brown for a heel and a toe and a sock, or just use this red for a heel and a toe and a sock, than I am to use a yarn that's like this all together and speckled. I just felt like white and brown and red was like not my thing. I don't know. There are definitely other ones that are going to be orangey, brown, red. There are so many things are packaged in yellow, orange, red variations, like tons of candies and snacks. So I've definitely had to think about that too with this whole snack vent situation, is that you really could just do orange and red for a whole Advent, and I don't think anybody wants, I don't want all those minis. Not everything goes with red. I really like these. I think these came out well. I really like the other ones that go with it, that are still drying right now. And like to some degree, I've had to kind of limit myself to like snacks that I know that I can get again, because like we're a little far from December. So there are a lot of things that I'm sort of planning early, and then knowing that that I'll have to acquire later. There's a lot sort of mentally going on with this. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I've been really excited about this dyeing project. And I figured if I dye the yarns sooner and have sort of a system where I figured out, okay, I had to, you know, go buy these things from Trader Joe's again later, you know, closer to December. And I like have sort of a system for it. I'm sort of hoping I forget what some of the yarns I've dyed, I've been really happy with. And I'm just kind of hoping that I forget what they look like, and that there's genuinely a little bit of a surprise for me, when there's definitely going to be a surprise for my husband. And if there's not, there's not. You know, some of it, like I have one that I dyed that's like a Skittles colorway, and I'm so happy with how it came out. And I think it's going to be like the like Christmas Day skein. I also haven't decided if this is going to New Year's Day or just to Christmas Day or whatever. Um, we usually, you know, we see family on Christmas, but like we don't have kids. So there's not like a huge exchange of gifts here. It's, you know, so anyway, maybe this one skein would be nice on Christmas. Maybe I'll start knitting a sock with it or something. But I feel like I'm not going to forget because I'm so happy with how that one looked. I'm not going to forget about that one. But maybe like some of the other sort of blips on the radar, like these little mini skeins, you know, maybe I'll still get a little bit of excitement. It's hard to make it like a surprise for yourself. But that's why I'm dyeing them now instead of dyeing them in November, because I really want to kind of package at least the yarn portion up. And I'll have like a labeled system. I'm still gonna know, you know, I still have to know to put the snack with the yarn and whatever. I haven't worked out all the details here. Feel free to make some suggestions. I don't expect that you necessarily have made an advent for yourself, but if you have, let me know. I saw somebody, I probably did not even have, I obviously did not have the idea of a yarn advent. That's, so many people do that. But I saw another YouTuber at some point last year talking about, creating an advent for herself from like her collection of stash. And I can't remember whether it was somebody who spins who was saying that they were going to tuck away like a little bit of fiber, you know, in little packages, or if it was somebody who's a knitter and was going to have like mini skeins that they already have in their collection. But they were talking about sort of creating an advent for themselves, or whether you could create it from your collection and trade a friend. And I don't have a friend crazy enough that they want my weird snack yarn, but because some snacks are not that attractive. I don't know. I've had to really go out of the box for looking at, you know, how am I interpreting this packaging or this snack food? Most snack food is brown, if we're being honest. It's kind of like brown or yellow, you know, white. There's not that much variety in that way, and a lot of the packaging is the same colors. And only when you start to do this crazy project do you realize that. But anyway, I've kind of gone out of the box. I've got some ideas that I like. I'm having a good time dyeing it, which is really a big part of it for me. Just like with dyeing this, is this exactly what I specifically set out to make? Not 100%, but as I was working on it, I was really enjoying it, and then I'm happy with it in the end. The nice thing about yarn dyeing is there's always black. You can always over dye. You can always just like, you know what? So I'm gonna go black. I'm gonna go navy blue. I'm gonna go super dark, and it's gonna be tonal. If you make a mistake in the dye pot, you can kind of come back from that. That is why I dye for me and not to sell at this point. I had kind of planned on doing that, and I realized how hard, first of all, how hard it is to, there's such a market for fantastically dyed yarn. But beyond that, it's a lot of pressure. When I had a few sales, it was a lot of pressure to then, within a couple of days, dye what that person wanted from my recipes. And it just turned out to not be a helpful pressure to me. So I like to dye like this, where I'm just having fun and I'm happy with how it comes out. Great. It's not something that that everybody wants to do in their house. You know, it requires a fair amount of setup and takedown. It requires a fair amount of special tools, especially if you're doing acid dyeing, because you can't use just like pots you're cooking in. So it's like a whole separate thing. And I do wear a respirator and gloves and whatnot. And but anyway, I enjoy it, and I'm having a lot of fun. And with that in mind, and with the fact that I am getting a bunch of advents, which I'll share more about when I get them in December, I plan to do Vlogmas, an update with my advents. But the other thing that I'm doing is I'm trying to think about when I get small mini skeins, and I get these different sort of collections of yarn that some of them have 24 mini skeins, some of them only have 12, some of them have like an odd number for another reason, like the solstice countdowns that are 21 days. And they're not all the same base. In general, I chose fingering weight yarns, but you know, they're not all sock yarns. Some of them are going to be more for garments, and couldn't be used as a sock heel or toe because they don't have nylon, or they're not a strong enough twist. I'm gonna have to, you know, look at them when I get them too. But I'm starting to plan what kind of projects I'm going to want to make. And with that in mind, some of what I'm dyeing with these, with my Advent, I'm doing some bigger skeins too, not just the mini skeins. And I'm also thinking outside of the box a little bit. So I got some from my same supplier, Knomad, from their undyed yarn collection. I got yarn in a cone, so that you can't dye it on the cone, but you can crank it into a tube on my sock machine. So I just cranked this while watching the Olympics this morning, but I cranked myself a couple tubes, and I will dye the tubes so that I can get a nice gradient, and do like different size tubes. I might do sort of like a speckled or tie-dye or stripy effect with them. I might do gradients. I can do sort of anything I want, because that is why, for me, it's worth it to have the setup for the dye pots, and it's worth it to bother with that stuff. It's not worth it for everybody, but I enjoy the sort of experimenting process around the yarn dyeing. So anyway, so I'm just gonna have some fun with sock tube. I've never dyed a sock tube because it costs more to buy sock yarn in this put up, but it does not, sorry for the sounds here, costs more to buy yarn in this setup. This is 5 skeins of yarn. So this is Snowdrift Select, which is just a little bit softer, still has the nylon, so I still think it's gonna be fine. Oh yeah, there you go. It even says here, Snowdrift Select, 75% fine superwash merino wool, 25% recycled nylon. So this is 1,000 grams, 1 kilogram, and yeah, 4,374 yards. So it's literally, oh, this is 10 skeins. Did you see me do that math? I knew that. I knew that when I bought it. Okay, I bought 2 of these, but I knew that. I just, it's hard to picture that this is 10 skeins, but there you go. So, so this is a ton. I don't know why. I thought like for the price, I would not have paid the same thing for 5 skeins. Anyway, whatever. So I started cranking these tubes, because you can't dye it like this. So I either have to take it from here and use my skeiner to make little hanks, because you can dye this, right? And you can wash this and finish it. Or the whole reason for the cones, it wasn't just because it costs a little bit less this way, and because it's really easy to wind a mini off of here. You just wind it directly on the skeiner instead of going from a hank that already exists or a skein that already exists to a cake and then back, is what I've been doing to make minis all week. Why am I doing that? I don't know. I didn't want to buy minis. They cost more, so I can do it myself. So this allows me to do that more easily, but it also, more importantly, allows me to do this. And I actually have no idea yet whether I like dyeing sock yarn in a tube. I don't know. I'm going to find out right after I hang up here. But anyway, so I was excited to try that, because I've never been willing to buy this kind of a put up, but I have the machine. Why would I not? So, so I'm going to try it, and I'm going to see how I enjoy that. And maybe I'm going to do more of my mini skeins that way to finish out my collection, because I'm really approaching 20 skeins already. I don't know. I might do 31 days of December, because I kind of am just enjoying myself. But anyway, I now have a ton of this. So the other reason for this, I'm not going to do all of it as mini skeins. I'm not going to do all of it as a cranked sock tube. My arm might fall off. Seriously though, it could give me a shoulder injury if I'm just cranking all day. So I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to do with it is I'm going to save at least one of these, you know, 1.5 probably. So a bunch of yarn, because as I said, the advents that I bought are mostly fingering weight. So in a lot of cases, in order to make a scrappy project or a really colorful project look more wearable and appeal to me more personally, sometimes there's a background color that kind of pulls them together. Sometimes there's you know, white in the background or black, but you know, even a bright color that just kind of pulls things together or offsets the constant changing color. So a lot of the projects that I've been thinking about basically require you to have a few skeins of something and then use an advent or use a bunch of mini skeins. So with that in mind, for me, if I'm buying 10 skeins of yarn or 5 skeins of yarn, it's hard for me to buy 5 skeins of a plain tonal yarn that costs a lot of money. I definitely buy a sweater quantity of yarn that costs a lot of money from an indie dyer who is dyeing things in some fabulous way that I can't do, that I really admire. But tonal or solid colored yarn, I'm just gonna dye myself. That's kind of more, you know, I feel like that's achievable for me, especially if we're talking about basically white or basically black, or a solid, simple color. I'm just gonna dye that myself. So I can absolutely skein this. Doesn't take me that long. And then I can just dye my own yardage, which is sort of it's kind of a go-to option for me for background color. So anyway, so I did that. And while I was buying from my Knomad supplier, some things were on sale. And one of the things that I also got, I haven't even taken out of the package, I'm not going to yet. This is Cirrus. This is their mohair silk lace weight. They actually have 2 mohair silk options, but this was the original one that they have. And I have some of their Pluma, their Surrey silk. I've featured some of my projects that I've made with that, but this is 70% Super Kid mohair, 30% mulberry silk. It's 437 yards in 50 grams, and this whole thing is 10 skeins, so it's 500 grams. So I'm definitely, for at least one of my mini skein advents, I'm going to be using mohair and doing some type of like adding mohair as sort of a neutral hold along, to kind of tone down things, but also help things kind of blend together. So, so basically I'm really excited and planning ahead for next year. I don't think that I'm going to cast something on specifically during, like while I'm opening the advents, but I don't know. I've never actually had a yarn advent. Or at least I've not had like a December, I've had like a Halloween countdown, 13-day Halloween countdown a couple years ago, but I've never done a full yarn advent in December. So this year I'm doing a bunch of them. And my plan is to kind of see how everything comes out. I'm really excited about seeing, you know, different dyers, directions that they've taken with a lot of sort of the same color schemes. And then I'm going to see how it comes out and how I want to combine things. I feel like I'm more likely to enjoy and wear something if I know what I'm planning instead of like sight unseen. I'm not a big blanket knitter. So, you know, so something like a blanket, I think it's really cool to just, you open it and you work on it that day, you work on that mini skein. But something like a sweater, I feel like I'm going to want to control a little bit more and be able to know, okay, do I want to dye some contrast? Do I want to hold this with mohair? Do I want to change the order? Do I want to combine some of these mini skeins with that other dye or some of their mini skeins? So anyway, So I'm getting really excited. In July, we just passed July 25th, or, you know, some of the dyers had sales for like Christmas in July. So I don't know, maybe that kind of sparked this for me, but I've been really excited the last couple of days about Advent season and about mini skeins. And I've just been like dyeing a million things. So that's what's going on for me. And I'm going to try dyeing sock tubes because everything is an experiment, and I'm just having fun. And then I also have to get back to the couple of projects that I'd already been working on that are just sort of on the back burner right now. Like I'm definitely, I have a lot of whips. I know I say that all the time, but I have been a little focused on spinning during Tour de Fleece. And then I was really focused on this sock knitting during sock week. And in the last couple of days, I've been super focused on dyeing. So I kind of need to, I'm cleaning up the dye stuff today, this afternoon. And I kind of have to then take a step back and go back to that top that I'm still trying to finish, and the dress for my mom that I've already cast on and that I did all that spinning for. So that's sort of the plan. Is like I've gone on this like crazy tangent and adventure this month, doing all these different things, and I kind of need to get back to just like, okay, I'm knitting these garments, and that's sort of where I'm headed next. So yeah. So in addition to that, I have been doing the other thing that I've been doing this week is a whole lot of mending, and everything from like simple like little sock mending for a hole that this is just a commercial sock, and I had a hole in this sock for a year, and it's embarrassing that it was at like the bottom of my mending pile, and it took me a year to do this tiny little needle weaving mending, and now I can wear these socks again, which is very exciting because I like those socks. But I'm also working on some bigger projects with jeans that have been unfortunately mended multiple times and then just really needed a big repair. So I'm working on fixing these. I'm almost done with these, and I don't even think you can really tell. They just completely split here, and we're completely open in the seat of my husband's jeans. These are like his work jeans that he uses in the yard outside. So anyway, I am fixing these. These have been mended before, but this is one of those things that like I can't just do this, not because of attention span, but because of the stress on my hands. Mending jeans by hand, which I don't always choose to do. Sometimes I use a sewing machine, but I like to do it by hand, and I use a thimble and I use a needle puller, and it still is just really stressful for my hands. So that's something that takes me a few days to do a pair. And yeah, that's the kind of thing that I've been working on, that I kind of need to get back to. I'd like to finish those jeans. I've got like an hour or two of work left on those ones, and then, dye just a little bit more of my mini skeins, experiment a little bit more there, and sort of get cleaned up, and then get back, to working on those two whips that are a little bit further along, my knitted whips. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm really happy to have finished what I have finished. I'm sort of just going along with what I'm excited about right now, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's also some things that I would like to get back to. So I'm trying to sort of reignite my enthusiasm for the knitted projects that are further along. And yeah, that's what's going on with me. I hope that you've had a productive summer and that you enjoyed Tour de Fleece if you were working on that. Let me know if you have tricks for keeping your motivation with the sock knitting, or after spending weeks working on one thing, like, do you feel like you have to change things up? Is that a normal thing? Or is that just me? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like my crafting attention is sometimes divided and sometimes kind of scattered over multiple things. But yeah, I'm excited to be working on what I'm working on. And if you are still here listening, thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and, you know, let me know what you're thinking about and whether you're excited about Advent season or whether that's not something you do at all. It's definitely something that not everybody is into mini skeins. Not everybody is trying to add to their collection right now, or feels like it's worth it to do those kind of things. So I know it's not everybody's thing, but definitely share what you're thinking about, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.